She said, "I don't want to be a mother," and left, said the girl abandoned on the highway. But a millionaire appeared and changed their lives forever. Comment what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story, and I want to get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The deafening roar of trucks on Interstate 5 masked the sound of childish sobs echoing along the shoulder on that suffocating March afternoon. Arthur Blackwood adjusted the air conditioning in his Audi A6 and checked the clock on the dashboard. 4:42 p.m. He was late for the meeting with investors from his construction firm, but the traffic between Oakland and San Jose always conspired against his commitments. At 52, Arthur had learned to meticulously control every variable of his life. Since losing Emily, his 6-year-old daughter, in an accident 5 years ago, he had transformed his pain into an obsession with work and emotional isolation. His company, Blackwood Constructions, thrived while his marriage to Catherine crumbled like a poorly planned building. It was then that he spotted two small figures walking dangerously close to the traffic lane that his organized world began to collapse. The smaller one, a girl with curly hair and a faded pink dress, was carrying something in her arms that Arthur initially mistook for a doll. Beside her, a slightly older child tried to stand firm as cars and semis sped by at a frightening speed, creating gusts of wind that nearly knocked them over. Arthur slowed down, the dormant paternal instinct awakening like an alarm in his chest. When he got close enough to see clearly, his heart stopped. The doll was moving. It was a real baby, tiny and apparently newborn, wrapped in a yellowish blanket that had seen better days. He slammed on the brakes, parking on the shoulder a few yards ahead of the children. He got out of the car on trembling legs, still trying to process the surreal scene before him. "Girls, come here, it's dangerous!" he shouted, running towards them. The smaller one, whom he would soon know as Daisy, stared at him with huge, frightened eyes, clutching the baby to her chest as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. The older one, Lily, instinctively stepped back, positioning herself protectively between Arthur and her little sister. "We don't go with strangers," Lily said with a firm voice that contrasted with her mere 5 years of age. "Mommy told us to wait here." Arthur crouched down to their level, his linen suit wrinkling on the hot asphalt. "Where is your mother?" he asked in the gentlest voice he could find. Daisy looked at the empty road, then at the baby in her arms. "She went to get food," she murmured, but her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. "She said she'd be back before the sun went to sleep." Arthur glanced at the sky. The sun was already beginning its descent on the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of orange. The children had been there for hours, perhaps since dawn, judging by their dehydrated appearance and the chapped lips that revealed extreme thirst and fatigue. "How long have you been here?" he insisted, noticing that the baby was dangerously quiet. "A long time," Lily replied, and for the first time, her voice showed the fear she was trying to hide. "Benjamin won't stop crying, but now he's very quiet. Daisy won't let go of him." The baby's name hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. Benjamin. Emily had always said that if she had a little brother, she wanted his name to be Benjamin. "Can I take a look at the baby?" he asked, slowly extending his hands. Daisy shook her head vigorously. "No, he's my baby. I take care of him." Her little words came out between the sobs she was trying to contain. It was then that Arthur realized the gravity of the situation. The baby was dehydrated, possibly with a fever, and the girls were exhausted beyond any reasonable limit for children their age. There was no time for protocols or doubts. "Girls, I'm going to take you to a safe place with water and food. The baby needs help urgently," he said, standing up and opening the back door of the car. "No!" shouted Lily, grabbing Daisy's free hand. "Mommy said not to go with anyone. She's coming back." Arthur felt tears sting his eyes. The scene brought back painful memories of Emily, always protective of her dolls, always confident that Daddy would fix everything. But this time, he would have to be the daddy he couldn't be when his own daughter needed him. "Listen," he said, crouching down again. "My name is Arthur. I have a big house with a fridge full of juice and good food. The baby is sick and needs a doctor. You can trust me." Daisy looked at Lily, then at the baby, who was beginning to whimper weakly in her arms. Something in Arthur's tone, in the desperate sincerity of his eyes, touched the girls' childish hearts. "Do you promise you won't separate us?" asked Lily, still hesitant. "I promise," Arthur replied. And at that moment, he knew he had just irreversibly altered the course of his existence. The girls got into the car, Daisy still clinging to the baby, Lily holding her sister's hand tightly. Arthur adjusted their seatbelts with extreme care, his hands shaking slightly. During the 20-minute drive to his house in the Willow Creek Estates gated community, he tried to get more information from the children, but only got confusing fragments of a story that didn't seem to make sense. Their mother, Evangeline, had simply disappeared during the night, leaving only a note saying she would be back soon and that they should take good care of Benjamin. When they reached the community gate, Arthur hesitated. He was about to enter his nearly 4,000-square-foot house, which for 5 years had housed only his loneliness and his ghosts, accompanied by 3 orphaned children he barely knew. The doorman, Mr. Henderson, frowned when he saw the children in the back seat but didn't ask any questions. Arthur was respected there, a discreet resident who never caused trouble. Inside the house, the reality of what he had done hit him with full force. The girls stood in the entrance hall, intimidated by the luxury they had never seen. A crystal chandelier, marble floors, expensive paintings on the walls. Everything contrasted brutally with the poverty evident in their torn and dirty clothes. "First, let's take care of the baby," Arthur said, heading to the landline in the living room. He called Dr. Henry Carter, the private pediatrician who had cared for Emily, and briefly explained the situation. 15 minutes later, Dr. Carter arrived at Arthur's house with his medical bag, his eyes wide with surprise, to find the solitary businessman caring for 3 unknown children. The baby's examination revealed severe dehydration and signs of prematurity. "He's at most a week old," the doctor said, administering a saline drip. "These children have been through a terrible ordeal. You did the right thing by bringing them here." While the doctor took care of Benjamin, Arthur prepared a warm bath for the girls and found some of Emily's old clothes that he still kept in her room. Seeing them in his deceased daughter's clothes was like a stab to the heart, but it also brought a strange sense of peace. Daisy finally allowed him to hold Benjamin after the baby was medicated and fed. Lily ate 2 plates of pasta with a hunger that broke his heart, while recounting fragments of their life with Evangeline in a shanty town on the outskirts of the city. As night fell, Arthur improvised beds in the living room with cushions and blankets. The girls slept in each other's arms, with Benjamin between them, while he sat in the armchair watching them and trying to understand how his life had completely changed in just a few hours. It was around midnight when his phone rang. The name on the screen made his blood run cold. "Catherine." "Arthur, I need to talk to you," said his ex-wife's voice, tense and irritated. "I heard you have 3 strange children in your house. What on earth is going on?" Oh, Arthur looked at the sleeping girls and felt the weight of what was to come. Catherine had always been unpredictable, but after the separation, she had developed a bitterness that turned any conversation into a conflict. And now, somehow, she already knew about the children. "Who told you?" he asked, lowering his voice so as not to wake them. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've completely lost your mind." I'm coming over now, and we're going to resolve this situation before it becomes a bigger scandal." The call ended abruptly, leaving Arthur with a terrible premonition. Catherine had found out about the children in less than 12 hours, which meant someone was talking about him. And knowing his ex-wife, he knew she wouldn't be coming to help. He looked again at Daisy, Lily, and Benjamin, sleeping peacefully, and realized he had started a war he couldn't even begin to comprehend. At 2 in the morning, the sound of the electronic gate echoed through the silent house, waking Lily, who immediately hugged Daisy tighter. Arthur rose from the armchair where he had spent the last few hours watching the children sleep, his body aching from the uncomfortable position and accumulated tension. Catherine burst through the door like a storm, her high heels clicking on the marble with the precision of gunshots. At 47, she maintained the icy elegance that had always characterized her, but now her green eyes shone with a fury Arthur knew all too well. "Where are they?" she asked without even greeting him, her gaze sweeping the room until she found the 3 children on the makeshift bed on the floor. "Catherine, they're sleeping," Arthur murmured, trying to block her view. "We can talk in the kitchen." "We're not going to talk at all," she retorted, raising her voice on purpose. "You've gone completely insane, Arthur, picking up 3 unknown children off the street. Do you have any idea how much legal trouble this could bring you?" Catherine's loud tone woke Daisy, who began to cry softly, which in turn woke Benjamin. In a matter of seconds, the room that had been breathing peace was filled with the cries of 2 frightened children. Lily quickly stood up, placing herself between Catherine and her siblings like a small, protective soldier. "Don't shout near Benjamin," she said with a courage that impressed Arthur. "He gets scared." Catherine looked at the 5-year-old girl, who was staring her down without fear, and something in her expression faltered for a moment, but her anger quickly took over again. "Arthur, this is madness. You can't just decide to take care of orphaned children as if they were abandoned kittens. There are institutions, legal procedures, social services," she argued, gesturing nervously. "They needed immediate help," Arthur replied, picking up Benjamin and rocking him gently. "The baby was dehydrated, almost unconscious. I couldn't leave them on the road." "And now what? What's your plan? To play happy family?" Catherine said with venomous sarcasm. "You could barely take care of our own daughter." The silence that followed was as sharp as glass. Arthur felt the blow hit him squarely, but it was Lily who broke the tension. "Uncle Arthur took care of us," she said, approaching him and holding onto the hem of his shirt. "He gave Benjamin food and medicine when he was sick." Catherine watched the scene, her ex-husband holding a newborn baby, while 2 little girls defended him. And for the first time since she had arrived, she remained silent. "Catherine, I know it seems impulsive, but I can't just ignore this," Arthur said, his voice choked with emotion. "When I saw them on the road, it was as if Emily was asking me to help. Don't you dare use our daughter to justify this insanity," Catherine exploded, but her own tears betrayed the pain her words carried. At that moment, Daisy approached Catherine with hesitant steps, offering her a small, crumpled drawing she had taken from her dress pocket, a bird made with crayon, clearly drawn by inexperienced, childish hands. "This is so you won't be sad," Daisy said in her sweet, tiny voice. "When Mummy cried, I made drawings for her." Catherine looked at the crumpled paper in her hands and, unable to control herself, burst into tears. She sat down heavily on the sofa, covering her face with her hands as she sobbed in a way Arthur hadn't seen since Emily's funeral. Lily and Daisy looked at each other, not fully understanding what was happening, but sensitive enough to realize the woman was in pain. Daisy climbed onto the sofa, and with the naturalness only children possess, hugged Catherine. "Don't cry, Auntie," she whispered. "Arthur is nice. He won't let anyone hurt us." Arthur watched the scene with a heavy heart, remembering how Emily used to comfort anyone who was sad around her. These children had the same natural kindness, the same ability to see beyond their own pain. Catherine spent the rest of the night at the house, helping Arthur care for the children. She watched in silence as Daisy adamantly refused to be separated from Benjamin, carrying him wherever she went, and how Lily took on responsibilities no 5-year-old should have. At dawn, when the girls finally fell back asleep, Catherine and Arthur talked in the kitchen. "They're not normal, Arthur," she said, not with cruelty, but with concern. "The little one has an unhealthy fixation on the baby, and the older one, she acts like a miniature adult. That's not healthy." "They've been through a trauma," he replied. "They lost their parents, were abandoned by their mother. It's natural for them to develop defense mechanisms." "Exactly, and you think you're equipped to handle that?" Catherine questioned. "You couldn't even handle your own grief when we lost Emily." Arthur knew she was right, but something inside him refused to give up on these children. "Maybe that's exactly why I need to try," he said. "Maybe this is my chance to do something right." The next morning, Catherine left, but not before making it clear that she would be back to monitor this situation closely. Her last words were a veiled threat about legal consequences if Arthur didn't regularize the children's situation quickly. After she left, Arthur decided to show the children around the house and the community. It was Saturday, and Willow Creek Estates was bustling with families enjoying the recreation area. What he didn't expect was the reaction of his neighbors. Walking through the common area with Daisy holding Benjamin and Lily by his side, Arthur noticed the stares. At first, they were just curious. Then they became disguised whispers among the mothers supervising their children in the pool. "Who are these children?" "Lou," he heard a voice ask. "He brought them home on Thursday night," another replied. "No one knows where they came from." "How strange for a single man to just take in orphaned children like that, don't you think?" Arthur felt his blood boil, but he kept his composure. He had known these women for years: Rose from Unit 204, Claudia from 301, Fern from 205. They had always been cordial, but now they looked at him as if he were a criminal. The situation worsened when Benjamin started to cry, and Daisy, nervous in the strange environment, couldn't calm him. The stares intensified, and Arthur clearly heard Rose commenting to the others about irregular situations and children at risk. "Let's go home," he murmured to the girls, but the damage was done. Lily had noticed the hostile looks and was squeezing Arthur's hand tightly, while Daisy cried softly along with the baby. Back in the apartment, Arthur tried to maintain normalcy, preparing lunch while the girls played in the living room. But his peace was interrupted by a call from the HOA president. "Arthur, I've received a few calls from concerned residents," said Mark Thompson, trying to be diplomatic. "Nothing official, you understand, but it would be good if you could clarify the situation with these children to avoid any misunderstandings." "What kind of misunderstandings, Mark?" Arthur asked, already knowing the answer. "Look, you've known me for years. I know you're a man of integrity, but people get cautious when they see unusual situations. Maybe it would be best if you had some documentation regarding custody of the children, just to reassure everyone." Arthur hung up the phone with a feeling of nausea. In less than 48 hours, he had gone from a respected resident to a suspect of acts he couldn't even name. In the afternoon, while he was trying to research legal procedures to regularize the children's situation, he received an unexpected visit. Eleanor Vance, a social worker from the city, was at his door accompanied by a court officer. "Mr. Blackwood, we received an anonymous tip about minors in an irregular situation at your residence," she said, showing him a court order. "I need to check on the children's condition and understand how they got here." Arthur felt his world collapse. Someone had filed a formal complaint against him. As Eleanor entered and began questioning the children, he watched Daisy hide behind the sofa with Benjamin, and Lily answered the questions with a fear that broke his heart. The children seem well cared for, Eleanor admitted after an hour of evaluation. But the situation is irregular, Mr. Blackwood. You can't just decide to take care of orphaned children without following legal procedures. I was trying to regularize the situation, Arthur defended himself. They needed immediate help. I understand your intentions, Eleanor said, but now I need to take the children to a temporary shelter while we investigate the case and locate any relatives. No! Screamed Daisy, running to Arthur with Benjamin in her arms. I don't want to leave. I want to stay with Uncle Arthur. Lily also clung to him, and for the first time since he had met them, he saw real terror in the brave little girl's eyes. Eleanor observed the children's reaction and hesitated. Mr. Blackwood, I'll give you 72 hours to begin the legal process for a temporary custody request. If you fail, I will have to do my duty. After the social worker left, Arthur was left alone with the children and a terrifying certainty. He had 3 days to save the only family he had left in his life, or he would lose everything all over again. Monday began with Arthur in line at the county clerk's office at 6 in the morning, holding a folder of documents he had collected all weekend. Beside him, Daisy dozed in his lap, with Benjamin clutched to her chest, while Lily watched every person who passed by as if expecting someone to come and separate them at any moment. "Next!" shouted the clerk, with the patience of someone who had repeated the same word hundreds of times that morning. Arthur approached with the children, placing the papers on the cold marble counter. The middle-aged woman adjusted her glasses and began examining the documents with a slowness that drove him to despair. Mr. Blackwood, to file for temporary custody, I need the children's birth certificates, proof of familial abandonment, and a psychological report, she said without looking up from the papers. But they were abandoned on the highway, Arthur explained, controlling the anxiety in his voice. I don't have these documents because their mother simply disappeared. The clerk finally looked at him, her eyebrows knitting in an expression of impatience. Then you first need to file a police report, then request a search for the documents at the Vital Records office, and only then can you file for custody. This could take weeks. Weeks, Arthur repeated, feeling panic rise in his throat. But I only have until Thursday. I'm sorry, sir, but those are the legal procedures, she replied, already calling the next person in line. Leaving the office with the children and a growing sense of defeat, Arthur decided to go directly to the law office of Richard Miller, his college friend who had specialized in family law. Richard received Arthur in his spacious office, but his serious expression brought no relief. Arthur, I'm going to be straight with you, Richard said, closing the civil code he was consulting. The situation is complicated. Without the children's documentation, without an official record of abandonment, without any known relatives, it's almost impossible to get custody in 72 hours. There has to be a way, Arthur insisted, watching Daisy draw on a piece of paper Richard had given her, always with Benjamin in her lap. These children have suffered too much to be thrown into different shelters. The problem is that technically you committed an irregularity by taking the children without immediately notifying the authorities, Richard explained. The social worker could argue it was kidnapping, even if your intentions were good. Arthur's blood ran cold. Kidnapping. It's extreme, but it's possible. That's why we need to act quickly and very carefully, Richard said, taking notes. I'll try to get an emergency hearing for Thursday, but you need witnesses to prove the children were truly abandoned and in danger. The doctor who examined the baby can testify, Arthur suggested. Great. Anyone else? Arthur thought, but realized with horror that there was no one else. He had acted on impulse, alone, without thinking of the legal consequences. On the way back home, Lily broke the silence that had settled in the car. Uncle Arthur, are they going to take us away? She asked with a frightening maturity for her 5 years. I won't let that happen, he replied, but his own voice sounded uncertain. Daisy can't be away from Benjamin, Lily continued, looking at her little sister. If they separate them, she'll get very sick. Arthur watched in the rearview mirror as Daisy hummed softly to the baby and understood that Lily was right. The bond between Daisy and Benjamin wasn't just sibling affection. It was obsessive, almost pathological. The 4-year-old girl had taken on the role of mother to the newborn in a way that wasn't natural. Arriving home, he found Catherine waiting at the community's gatehouse, a determined look on her face. "We need to talk," she said, following them to the apartment. Once inside, Catherine got straight to the point. "I called some acquaintances at the courthouse. Arthur, the situation is worse than you think. Eleanor Vance has a reputation for being inflexible. If she's decided to take the children, she will." "Then help me," Arthur pleaded, his voice almost a whisper. "You have contacts, influence." "I can try," Catherine said, but hesitated. "But I want you to understand one thing. If we keep these children, it won't be temporary. It will be forever. Are you prepared for that?" Arthur looked at Daisy, who had hidden behind the sofa with Benjamin as soon as she saw Catherine, and at Lily, who was watching him, waiting for an answer. "I am," he said, and for the first time since he found the children, his voice sounded firm and decisive. Catherine spent the afternoon helping Arthur organize all possible documentation and making calls to contacts in the judiciary. But as the hours passed, it became clear that time was against them. On Tuesday, Arthur woke up to Benjamin crying inconsolably. The baby had a high fever and was having trouble breathing. Daisy cried along with him, desperate that she couldn't calm her little brother. The race to the hospital was frantic. Dr. Carter examined Benjamin and diagnosed severe pneumonia, possibly caused by the exposure the baby had suffered when he was abandoned. "He needs to be hospitalized," the doctor said. "It's serious but treatable. I'll do everything I can." At the hospital, Daisy adamantly refused to leave the room where Benjamin was admitted. She sat by the crib and didn't move, even when Arthur tried to convince her to eat or rest. "If I leave, he'll leave too," she said with a childish logic that broke his heart. "Just like Mummy and Daddy left when I wasn't looking," Lily explained to Arthur, whispering so Daisy wouldn't hear, that their parents had left during the night while Daisy was sleeping. Since then, the girl had developed a belief that if she stopped watching the people she loved, they would disappear. On Wednesday, Eleanor Vance showed up at the hospital. "Mr. Blackwood, I came to check on the children's situation," she said, observing Daisy glued to Benjamin's crib and Lily sleeping in the armchair beside her. "As you can see, they are being well cared for," Arthur replied, exhausted after 2 sleepless nights at the hospital. "But they are not in a regular situation," Eleanor retorted. "And now, with the baby's hospitalization, it's even clearer that these children need specialized care that you cannot provide." "Dr. Carter said the baby is responding well to treatment," Arthur defended himself. Eleanor watched Daisy for a few minutes, noticing how the girl refused to let go of the crib's bars even to use the bathroom. Her expression became worried. "Mr. Blackwood, this child is clearly traumatized. She needs specialized psychological support, not a single man who decided to play hero." "I can provide psychological support," Arthur argued. "I can give them everything they need." "Being able to and being legally authorized are different things," Eleanor said, checking something in her planner. "Tomorrow at 3 p.m., I will be here to take the children to appropriate shelters. This is a final decision." After Eleanor left, Arthur desperately called Richard. "Richard, she's taking the children tomorrow. There has to be something we can do." "Arthur, I managed to schedule an emergency hearing for Thursday at 9 a.m. before she gets to the hospital. It's our only chance," Richard said. "But I need to warn you. I found out something about Eleanor Vance that could complicate everything." "What did you find out?" "She has a history of preferentially placing orphan children in shelters linked to a specific charitable organization. There are rumors at the courthouse about irregularities, but nothing officially proven. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of irregularities? Facilitated adoptions for couples who pay large sums to the institutions. Nothing illegal technically, but morally questionable. My God, Arthur murmured, looking at the children. Is she going to sell the girls? I can't say that, but keep the children close until the hearing tomorrow, Richard advised. That night, Arthur couldn't sleep. He watched Daisy sleeping beside Benjamin's crib and Lily curled up in the armchair, and he knew he couldn't lose these children. They had brought back to his life a purpose he thought he had lost forever. It was then that, rummaging through the papers Catherine had managed to obtain about the children, he found something that would change everything. A partially burned birth certificate in Daisy's dress pocket. On the partially legible document, he could make out the mother's name, Evangeline Santos Vance. Vance. The same last name as the social worker. With trembling hands, Arthur picked up the phone and called Richard. Richard, I think I've figured out why Eleanor wants to take the children so badly. She's related to them. The discovery of the Vance surname on the burnt certificate turned Thursday morning into a race against time. Arthur spent the early hours in Richard's office while his lawyer made frantic calls to investigate the family connection between Eleanor and the children. I got it, Richard said at 7 in the morning, hanging up the phone with a triumphant expression. Eleanor Vance is Evangeline Santos Vance's aunt, the older sister of the children's father. And the best part, she omitted this information in all official reports. Does that mean a conflict of interest? Arthur asked, holding a cup of cold coffee between his trembling hands. It means much more than that. It means she has been conducting an irregular process from the beginning, hiding family ties that disqualify her from the case. At 8:30, they arrived at the courthouse. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9, but Richard warned Arthur it would be a tough battle. Judge Martinelli is known for being strict on matters involving minors. He will question every detail of your decision to take the children, Richard explained as they climbed the building stairs. In the hearing room, Arthur sat nervously beside Richard, watching Eleanor enter, accompanied by a lawyer he didn't know. Her expression was too confident for his liking. Judge Martinelli, a 60-year-old man with grey hair and gold-rimmed glasses, called the first witness, Dr. Henry Carter. Doctor, in your professional opinion, what was the condition of the children when Mr. Blackwood brought them to you? The judge asked. Your Honor, the baby was in a critical state of dehydration and malnutrition. Without immediate medical intervention, he probably would not have survived. The girls also showed signs of prolonged neglect, replied Dr. Carter. And what about Mr. Blackwood's behavior with the children? He demonstrated genuine care and responsibility. He followed all medical prescriptions and remained at the hospital caring for them during the baby's hospitalization. Eleanor stood up when she was called, her posture confident and professional. Ms. Vance, what is your assessment of the irregular situation created by Mr. Blackwood? The judge asked. Your Honor, despite his good intentions, Mr. Blackwood acted impulsively and irregularly. The children need specialized care in a controlled environment. The younger one shows signs of severe trauma that require professional psychological intervention. It was then that Richard stood up for the cross-examination. Ms. Vance, could you please inform the court of your familial relationship with the children in question? Eleanor visibly paled. I don't understand the question. It's a simple question. Do you have any degree of kinship with Evangeline Santos Vance, the children's mother? The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor looked at her lawyer, who discreetly motioned for her to answer. Evangeline is my late husband's niece, she finally said. And why did you omit this information in all official reports of the case? Richard pressed. I didn't think it was relevant. You didn't think it was relevant, Richard repeated, raising his voice. Your Honor, Ms. Vance has conducted this case while hiding an obvious conflict of interest. She is family to the children, but instead of taking custody as a close relative, she preferred to send them to shelters. Judge Martinelli frowned, clearly disturbed by the revelation. Ms. Vance, this is extremely serious. Why didn't you take custody of the children, being a close relative? Eleanor hesitated, sweating visibly. I don't have the financial or structural means to care for 3 children, one with a disability. A disability? The judge questioned. What disability? The younger girl, Daisy, exhibits severe obsessive-compulsive behavior regarding the baby. It's a condition that requires specialized treatment. Arthur's heart raced. Eleanor was pathologizing Daisy's protective behavior to justify institutionalizing the children. Richard immediately requested a recess to present additional evidence. He showed the judge photos of the children at the hospital, medical reports from Dr. Carter, and most importantly, the partially burned birth certificate that proved the kinship Eleanor had omitted. Your Honor, what we see here is a social worker who omitted crucial information, did not assume her family responsibilities, and even tried to pathologize normal traumatic behaviors in orphaned children, Richard argued. When the hearing was suspended for the judge's deliberation, Arthur went out into the hallway and found Catherine waiting with Lily. How's Daisy? He asked. She refused to leave the hospital, Catherine replied. She's been sitting by Benjamin's crib for over 12 hours. She won't eat, won't sleep, just hums that song. Lily pulled on Arthur's shirt. Uncle, Daisy said that if the judge takes us away, she'll stop breathing along with Benjamin. She said it very seriously. Arthur's blood ran cold. Daisy was developing suicidal ideations at the age of 4. We have to go back to the hospital now, he said to Catherine. If we lose this hearing, it might be too late. At the hospital, they found Daisy exactly as Catherine had described. The girl was pale, dehydrated, but refused to let go of Benjamin's crib bars. Daisy, my love, you need to eat something. Arthur tried crouching beside her. No, she whispered, without taking her eyes off her brother. If I leave, they'll take Benjamin away, just like they took Mommy and Daddy. No one is going to take Benjamin, Arthur assured her, but his own voice betrayed his uncertainty. Liar, Daisy said, and for the first time since he had met her, she looked at him directly. Everyone lies. Mommy lied when she said she'd come back. The auntie lied when she said she'd take care of us. You'll lie too. Arthur felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. This 4-year-old child had completely lost the ability to trust adults. It was at that moment his cell phone rang. It was Richard. Arthur, the judge has made a decision. You've been granted temporary custody for 90 days, but with very strict conditions. What conditions? Daisy and Lily must begin psychological counseling immediately. You must hire a qualified nanny to help with the children. And Eleanor has been removed from the case, but another social worker will make weekly visits. Arthur closed his eyes, feeling a momentary sense of relief. But he knew that 90 days would fly by, and he would have to prove he could be a suitable father to 3 traumatized children. There's one more thing, Richard continued. The judge has ordered a search for other relatives of the children. If a family member comes forward wanting custody, you could still lose the children. What do you mean? Apparently, Eleanor mentioned in the hearing that Evangeline has other living relatives, aunts, cousins. If a relative with better conditions appears, the judge could transfer custody. Arthur looked at Daisy, still clinging to the crib, and at Lily, who had started nervously biting her nails, a habit he noticed she developed when she was anxious. Daisy, he said softly. "The judge said you can stay with me." The girl looked at him with suspicion. "For how long?" "For as long as you want to stay." "Until I grow up?" she asked. "Until you grow up," Arthur promised. Daisy finally let go of the crib bars and threw herself into his arms, crying for the first time since she had arrived at the hospital. Lily hugged him too, and for a moment, Arthur believed everything would be all right, but his peace was short-lived. As he hugged the girls, he saw a woman through the hospital window talking to Dr. Carter in the hallway. A woman he didn't know, but who was looking in the direction of Benjamin's room with an interest that sent shivers down his spine. When Dr. Carter approached the room, his expression was tense. "Arthur, I need to talk to you," he said. "That woman is Theodora Scott, Evangeline's sister. She said she's here to pick up the children." Theodora Scott was about 30 years old and had an appearance that immediately brought back painful memories for Arthur. She had the same large, dark eyes as Daisy, but in them was a coldness that contrasted sharply with her niece's childish sweetness. She wore expensive clothes, carried a designer handbag, and displayed jewelry that suggested a much higher financial status than Evangeline had possessed when she abandoned the children. "Mr. Blackwood?" she said, extending her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Theodora Scott, the children's aunt. I've come to get my niece and nephews." Arthur didn't shake her extended hand, instinctively suspicious. "How did you know they were here?" "Eleanor contacted me yesterday. She said my sister had abandoned her children and that a stranger was trying to keep them," Theodora replied, her tone laced with a veiled accusation. "I can only imagine how difficult it must have been for you to care for 3 traumatized children." "Duck, where were you when Evangeline abandoned her children?" Arthur questioned, noticing that Daisy had hidden completely behind his legs upon seeing her aunt. "I live in New York. I work in a marketing firm and have an established life," Theodora said, looking around the hospital with a certain superiority. "I can offer the children everything they need, a home of their own, private school, health insurance, things a single man like yourself could hardly provide." Lily approached Arthur and whispered something in his ear that made his blood run cold. "Uncle, Aunt Theodora is mean. She used to hit Mommy when we were little." Arthur looked at Theodora with new eyes, now noticing details he had initially ignored. The way she avoided looking directly at the children, the tension in her shoulders, the way she spoke of them as if they were objects to be transferred. "Ms. Scott, if I may ask, why didn't you help your sister when she was clearly in distress?" Arthur questioned. Theodora hesitated for a moment before answering. "Evangeline was always irresponsible. I tried to help her several times, but she always made the wrong decisions. Getting involved with unsuitable men, getting pregnant without the means." "She had postpartum depression," Arthur interrupted. "That's not irresponsibility. It's an illness." "It doesn't matter now," Theodora said with growing impatience. "What matters is that I can give these children a better life. I have resources, stability." At that moment, Benjamin woke up and started crying in his crib. Daisy immediately let go of Arthur and ran to calm her little brother, softly humming the song that always soothed him. The 4-year-old's automatic and loving reaction as she cared for the baby made even Theodora pause. "Has she always been like that with him?" Theodora asked, watching Daisy. "Ever since I found them," Arthur replied. "Daisy has become Benjamin's little mother." "That's not healthy," Theodora said coldly. "A 4-year-old can't take on adult responsibilities. This just confirms they need specialized care." Dr. Carter, who had been silently observing the conversation, finally intervened. "Ms. Scott, I'd like to ask a few questions about the children's medical history. Are you aware of any special health conditions, allergies, medications they use?" Theodora was clearly uncomfortable. I don't have that information. As I said, I live in New York and haven't seen my sister in a few years. A few years? Dr. Carter repeated. How long exactly? I haven't seen her much since Daisy was born, Theodora admitted reluctantly. Arthur felt a wave of indignation. You haven't seen the children in 4 years, and now you want to take them. Circumstances have changed, Theodora defended herself. Now they're orphans and need a real family. They have a family, Lily said suddenly, surprising all the adults. Uncle Arthur is our family now. Theodora bent down to Lily's level, forcing a maternal smile that seemed completely artificial. Sweetheart, I'm your real aunt. I'm your mommy's sister. Come with me and you'll have everything you've ever wanted. Toys, pretty clothes, your own bed. I don't want to, Lily said firmly, moving away from Theodora. I want to stay with Uncle Arthur and Aunt Catherine. The mention of Catherine made Arthur realize his ex-wife was watching the whole scene from the doorway. She had arrived silently and was now analyzing Theodora with the critical eye of someone who had spent years working as a child psychologist. Excuse the intrusion, Catherine said, entering the room. I'm Catherine Blackwood, a child psychologist. I'd like to better understand what your plan is for the children. Theodora straightened up, clearly annoyed by yet another person questioning her motives. My plan is to give them a proper home. I have a 3-bedroom house in Manhattan. I can enroll them in private schools. And what about psychological support? Catherine asked. Daisy shows symptoms of reactive attachment disorder, and Lily shows signs of severe anxiety. They will need specialized therapy for years. I can pay for it, Theodora answered automatically. I'm not talking about money, Catherine said with forced patience. I'm talking about dedication, time, unconditional love. These children have suffered deep trauma. They need someone who understands that recovery will be slow and difficult. Theodora remained silent for a moment, and Arthur could see in her expression that she hadn't considered the emotional implications of caring for traumatized children. Obviously, I will. Learn to deal with these issues, she said finally. Learn? Catherine repeated. Mrs. Scott, may I ask what your real motivation is for wanting custody of the children? The question hit Theodora like a slap. She looked around the room, clearly looking for a way out of the uncomfortable situation that had been created. They are my family, she said finally, but her voice sounded hollow. It was then that Lily made a revelation that changed everything. Aunt Theodora, are you going to sell us too? The silence that followed was deafening. All the adults stared at the 5-year-old girl who had made a devastating accusation with the naturalness of someone used to witnessing transactions involving children. What are you talking about, sweetheart? Catherine asked, crouching down to Lily's level. Aunt Theodora sold our cousin Lucy to a rich family when she was little, Lily explained. Mommy cried a lot and fought with her. That's why we didn't see our aunt anymore. Theodora turned visibly pale. That's not true. The girl doesn't understand. Lucy was our cousin, Lily continued, looking directly at Theodora. You told Mommy she was going to have a better life, but Mommy found out you got money for it. Arthur felt his world collapse. The woman in front of him didn't want to care for the children. She wanted to profit from them. Dr. Carter, who had remained silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke. Ms. Scott, I think it would be best if you left. I will report this conversation to the proper authorities. This is nothing but childish imagination, Theodora protested, but she was already backing toward the door. You'll be hearing from me. I have legal rights to these children. After she left, Daisy finally spoke, still cradling Benjamin. I remember her. She took Lucy away and told us not to tell anyone. Arthur hugged the girls, feeling a mixture of relief and terror. They had escaped Theodora for now, but she had made it clear she would be back with legal backing. We need to prepare, Catherine said. If she really has ulterior motives with the children, she'll try to use the law to her advantage. Arthur nodded, but his mind was already devising more drastic plans. If the legal system wouldn't protect these children, he would find other ways to keep them safe. What he didn't expect was that 3 hours later, Theodora would return to the hospital accompanied by 2 court officers and a new court order that would change everything again. "Mr. Blackwood," the officer said, "by court order, the children are to be immediately transferred to the provisional custody of Miss Theodora Scott, while allegations of irregularities in the previous proceeding are investigated." Daisy looked at Arthur with eyes full of terror, clutching Benjamin to her chest as if her life depended on it. The court order trembled in Arthur's hands as he tried to process what was happening. Theodora stood behind the court officers with a barely concealed look of triumph as Daisy began to panic visibly, her small arms squeezing Benjamin so tightly that the baby started to cry. "No!" Daisy screamed, running to the farthest corner of the hospital room. "I'm not going with her. She's evil. She sold Lucy." The court officer, a middle-aged man with a tired expression, looked at the scene with evident discomfort. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand the situation is difficult, but I must carry out the court's order." "Wait," Dr. Carter intervened, positioning himself between the officers and the children. "The baby is hospitalized with pneumonia. He cannot be removed from the hospital until he is medically discharged." "When will that be?" one of the officers asked. "At least 3 more days, maybe a week," the doctor replied, clearly buying time. Theodora stepped forward, irritated. "Then I'll take the girls now and pick up the baby when he's discharged." It was as if someone had set Daisy on fire. The girl began to scream with an intensity that startled even the adults accustomed to dealing with children's crises. "No! You can't separate us! He'll stop breathing without me!" she shrieked, clinging to the crib bars as if she were part of it. Lily ran to her sister and also began to cry, hugging Daisy from behind. "Please don't take us. We promise to be good." Catherine watched the scene with a broken heart, her experience as a child psychologist telling her exactly what this trauma could do to the children. She approached the officers. "Gentlemen, I am a psychologist and I can attest that separating these children now will cause irreversible psychological damage. Daisy has severe attachment disorder. Separating her from her brother could trigger a psychotic break." "Ma'am, I can't disobey a court order," the officer said, but his hesitation was evident. It was then that Arthur made a desperate decision. He approached Daisy and knelt beside her. "Daisy, look at me," he said in the calmest voice he could muster. "Remember when you said that everyone lies?" The girl nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I promised I wouldn't lie to you. So I'm going to tell you the truth. These men are here because a judge said you have to go with your aunt. But I will fight until the last day of my life to bring you back." "I don't want to go, Uncle Arthur," Daisy sobbed. "I know, my little one. But sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do so we can be together later," Arthur explained, holding the girl's trembling little hands. Theodora approached, clearly impatient with the emotional scene. "Let's get this over with. The children will get used to it." "Get used to it?" Catherine repeated, turning to Theodora with restrained fury. "Ma'am, these children have suffered abandonment, neglect, and are now being forced to leave the only person who has given them security in recent months. They will not simply get used to it." "Doctor, don't meddle in things you don't understand," Theodora replied coldly. "I am their family. I know what's best." "Family?" said Lily, still hugging Daisy. "Family doesn't sell children. Family doesn't let a baby get sick all alone." The 5-year-old's accusation made the court officer frown. "What is the child talking about?" "Childish nonsense," Theodora said quickly. "She's confused." But Dr. Carter had heard the entire previous conversation and decided to interfere. "Officer, I would like to register some medical concerns about this transfer. These children are under my care due to severe trauma. An abrupt change of caregiver could significantly worsen their psychological state. "Doctor, I understand your concern, but I cannot ignore a judicial order," the officer replied. But it was clear the situation was making him uncomfortable. It was then that something no one expected happened. Benjamin, who had remained relatively calm throughout the commotion, began to have breathing difficulties. The medical monitors started beeping, and Dr. Carter rushed to the crib. "He's having a bronchospasm," the doctor said, quickly checking the baby's vital signs. "I need to medicate him immediately." Daisy went into a total panic. "He's stopping breathing! I told you they'd hurt him!" The girl tried to get to the crib, but the officer stopped her, which only intensified her crisis. She began to have what was clearly a panic attack, hyperventilating and shaking uncontrollably. "Get away from her!" Catherine shouted, rushing to Daisy. "She's having a severe anxiety attack." The scene in the hospital room had descended into total chaos. Benjamin struggling to breathe, Dr. Carter administering emergency medication, Daisy having a panic attack, Lily crying desperately, and Theodora visibly annoyed by the whole situation. "Enough," said the older officer, clearly fed up. "I will not remove children in a state of medical and psychological crisis. I will inform the judge of the circumstances and request a re-evaluation of the order." "You can't do that," Theodora protested. "I have rights." "Ma'am, the child is having a panic attack and the baby is having a respiratory crisis. Any sensible judge will want to re-evaluate this situation," the officer replied firmly. After the officers and Theodora left, Dr. Carter managed to stabilize Benjamin, but it took Daisy over an hour to calm down completely. When she finally stopped shaking, she approached Arthur with an expression that haunted him. "Uncle Arthur, if they take us, I'm going to stop eating until I'm like Benjamin when he was sick," she said with a terrifying serenity for a 4-year-old child. Arthur understood it wasn't a dramatic, childish threat. It was a promise made by a child who had completely lost hope in the adult world. That night, after the children finally fell asleep, Arthur and Catherine talked in the hospital corridor. "She's talking about wasting away, isn't she?" Catherine asked. "She said she's going to stop eating," Arthur confirmed. "A 4-year-old is already planning to let herself wither away. What kind of trauma creates that?" "The kind that comes from losing every adult she ever trusted," Catherine replied. "Arthur, we have to do something. If Theodora takes these children, especially Daisy, the psychological damage could be irreversible." "Richard is working on an appeal, but he said it could take weeks," Arthur said. "We don't have weeks, we have days, maybe hours." Catherine was silent for a moment before speaking. "What if we found something about Theodora that would legally disqualify her from custody?" "Like what?" "Lily mentioned she sold a child before, if we could prove it. But how? It was years ago, and Theodora is clearly smart enough to cover her tracks," Arthur said. "Not always," Catherine replied thoughtfully. "People who do this once tend to do it again. Maybe she has other deals in the works." Arthur looked at his ex-wife with a mixture of admiration and concern. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting it might be time to stop playing defense," Catherine said. "If she wants a war for the rights to these children, maybe it's time we gave her one." The next day, Arthur received a call that would change everything again. It was Richard, and his voice was tense. "Arthur, I have news. I managed to delay the execution of the order for another 48 hours, citing the children's medical crisis. But there's something else." "What?" I investigated Theodora Scott's past. She doesn't work in marketing like she said. She's a partner in a facilitated adoption agency that is being investigated by the New York District Attorney's Office for irregularities." Arthur felt a mix of hope and horror. "Irregularities like what?" "Like charging exorbitant fees to couples who want to adopt and pressuring vulnerable families to give up their children." "Arthur, Theodora Scott doesn't want to care for the girls. She wants to sell them. The information about the investigation against Theodora came to Arthur like a ray of hope in the midst of the storm. He hung up the phone and immediately found Catherine, who was in the hospital room, trying to convince Daisy to eat a few spoonfuls of soup. "Catherine, we need to talk," he said, calling her into the hallway. When he told her about Richard's discovery, Catherine's eyes lit up with a determination he hadn't seen in years. "A facilitated adoption agency under investigation," she repeated. "Arthur, this is exactly what we needed, but 48 hours isn't much time to gather solid evidence." Richard said he can try to contact the prosecutor in charge of the investigation in New York if we can prove that Theodora is under suspicion of child trafficking. "She loses any right to the children," Catherine completed, "but we have to be careful. If she suspects we've found something, she might try to speed up the process somehow." At that moment, Dr. Carter approached them with a worried expression. "You need to see this," he said, showing them his phone. "I just got a call from a pediatrician colleague in New York. She called me because she saw my name in the children's file." "What did she want?" Arthur asked. "She said that 3 months ago, she handled a very strange case. A 6-year-old girl was brought to the hospital by a woman who introduced herself as the new adoptive mother. The child was in a state of shock, refused to speak, and showed clear signs of having been forcibly separated from her previous family." Catherine turned pale. "And what happened?" "The woman who brought the child was named Theodora Scott. She insisted the girl was just adjusting to her new family, but my colleague found it so strange that she filed a report with local child protective services." "And?" Arthur pressed. "The investigation was closed because apparently all the documents were in order, but my colleague said she never forgot that child's eyes. It was the same look she now sees in the photos of your girls." Arthur felt a chill down his spine. "Dr. Carter, can your colleague testify about this?" She said yes. "And what's more, she still has the report she made at the time, with photos of the child in the state she arrived at the hospital." While Dr. Carter contacted his colleague to get a copy of the report, Catherine had an idea that would change the course of everything. "Arthur, what if we could get Theodora to expose herself?" "How?" "By pretending to be a couple interested in adopting," Catherine said, her eyes shining with determination. "If she really has an agency that facilitates illegal adoptions, maybe we can record her offering the girls for sale." Arthur looked at her with equal parts admiration and terror. "Catherine, that's too risky. If she finds out—" "She won't find out if we do it right," she said. "I know people from my time in practice who could help us. Couples who really wanted to adopt but gave up because of the bureaucracy. You're talking about a complex operation. I'm talking about saving 3 children who have already suffered too much," Catherine interrupted. "Arthur, you saw what happened to Daisy yesterday. If she's forced to leave here, I don't know if we'll be able to bring her back." That afternoon, while Catherine discreetly organized her strategy, Arthur remained at the hospital with the children. Benjamin was responding well to treatment, but Daisy had eaten almost nothing since the episode with the court officers. "Daisy, you need to eat to be strong and take care of Benjamin," Arthur tried, offering her a yogurt. "I don't want to be strong," she replied with devastatingly simple logic. "If I'm weak, maybe they won't want to take me." Lily, who was drawing at the table nearby, looked up. "Uncle Arthur, last night I dreamed about Mommy." "What did she say in the dream?" Arthur asked, sitting beside her. "She said she was sad because she left us with bad people, but that now she had found good people to take care of us," Lily replied. "She told me to take care of Daisy and Benjamin until she comes back." "And did you tell her she's not coming back?" Daisy asked, approaching her sister. "No," Lily said, hugging Daisy. "I told her she didn't have to come back because we already had a new family." and she smiled. Arthur felt tears sting his eyes. These children had been through so much trauma that even their dreams had become emotional survival mechanisms. In the late afternoon, Catherine returned with news. "I did it," she said with an expression of cautious triumph. "Maria and Charles Foster, a couple I know from my practice, agreed to help us. They tried to adopt legally for 3 years without success. How are we going to approach Theodora? Maria is going to call her tonight, pretending she got the contact through a friend. She'll say they have excellent financial means and want a child quickly, without bureaucracy. What if she gets suspicious? Maria is an actress. She'll be convincing," Catherine said. "And Charles works at a tech company. He can create convincing fake documents if needed." That night, while the children slept, Arthur and Catherine waited anxiously in the hospital waiting room. Maria would make the call at 9 o'clock. At 9:15, Catherine's phone rang. "It worked," came Maria's voice from the other end. She scheduled a meeting for tomorrow at 2 p.m. in a cafe in New York. Arthur, she didn't waste any time. She said she has 2 beautiful and very young girls available for immediate adoption. Arthur felt nauseous. Theodora was really selling her nieces. "Did she mention a price?" Catherine asked. $100,000, $50,000 per child, Maria replied. "She said that for that price, she guarantees clean documentation and children of good stock." The number was astronomical, confirming that Theodora saw the girls purely as valuable merchandise. "Maria, are you sure you want to do this?" Arthur asked. "It could be dangerous." "Arthur, Charles and I have always wanted children. We couldn't conceive, and the legal adoption process frustrated us for years. If we can help expose this woman and save these children, we'll do it," Maria said with determination. The next morning, while Catherine and the couple prepared for the meeting with Theodora, Arthur received an unexpected call that almost made him collapse. It was Eleanor Vance. "Mr. Blackwood, I need to speak with you urgently," she said, her voice tense. "It's about Theodora Scott and something I discovered about her past that could change everything." "Oh, what is it?" "I can't talk over the phone. Can I meet you at the hospital in an hour?" Arthur agreed, but he was suspicious. Eleanor had been removed from the case precisely for hiding information. Why did she want to help now? When Eleanor arrived at the hospital, her appearance was different. She looked tired, worried, and her hands trembled slightly as she held the papers she had brought. "Mr. Blackwood, I need to admit that I made serious mistakes in this case," she began. "I omitted information out of fear." "Fear of what?" "Fear of Theodora," she said, lowering her voice. "She isn't just my ex-sister-in-law. She is. She is dangerous." Eleanor then told a story that made Arthur's blood run cold. 5 years ago, when her husband was still alive, Theodora had blackmailed the entire family with compromising information she had about his illegal business dealings. That was how she got Eleanor to facilitate the adoption of several children over the years. "How many children?" Arthur asked. "At least 12 that I know of," Eleanor admitted, tears streaming down her face. "All sold to wealthy families who didn't want to wait for the legal process. And you allowed this? She threatened to destroy my family. She said if I didn't cooperate, she would reveal information that would send my husband to prison," Eleanor explained. "When he passed away 2 years ago, I thought I was finally free of her. But then the girls appeared," Arthur understood. "Exactly. And she saw a new opportunity. 2 little girls and a baby are worth a lot of money on the irregular adoption market," Eleanor said. "Mr. Blackwood, I came here because I can't live with this on my conscience anymore, especially after seeing how much those children love you." Eleanor handed Arthur a folder with documents that would prove Theodora's entire operation: fake contracts, payment receipts, even recordings of phone conversations she had secretly made as insurance against her sister-in-law. "Why are you giving me this now?" Arthur asked. Because this morning, Theodora called me. She said if I tried to interfere in the children's case again, she would make me disappear like she did with other people who got in her way, Eleanor said, trembling. Mr. Blackwood, I don't think she's just selling children anymore. I think she's eliminating people who can expose her. Eleanor's revelation that Theodora was eliminating people sent Arthur into a total panic. He immediately called Catherine, who was on her way to New York with Maria and Charles for the meeting with Theodora. Catherine, you have to cancel everything now, he said, his voice trembling. Theodora is more dangerous than we imagined. Arthur, we're almost there. What happened? Eleanor told me that Theodora threatened to make her disappear, just like she did with other people. She's not just selling children, Catherine. She might be eliminating witnesses. There was silence on the other end of the line before Catherine responded with a determination that scared him. Then it's even more important that we do this today. Arthur, if we don't stop her now, these children will never be safe. Catherine, don't. It's already decided. Maria has a hidden recorder, and Charles will be outside the cafe. If anything goes wrong, he'll call the police immediately. The call ended, leaving Arthur with a terrible feeling that he was about to lose not just the children, but Catherine as well. Eleanor, who had watched the entire conversation, touched Arthur's arm. Mr. Blackwood, there's something else I need to tell you. About Evangeline. The children's mother. What about her? She didn't abandon the children because of postpartum depression, Eleanor said, lowering her voice. Theodora forced her to abandon them. Arthur felt the floor disappear from under his feet. What do you mean? Theodora found out where Evangeline was living with the children. She threatened to hurt the baby if she didn't give up all three for adoption. She said if Evangeline disappeared and left the children somewhere they would be found, she would ensure they went to a good family. My God, Arthur murmured. Did Evangeline believe her? Evangeline was desperate. No money, no support, with a sick newborn. Theodora convinced her it was the only way to save the children. And where is Evangeline now? Eleanor hesitated before answering. No one knows. She disappeared right after abandoning the children. Theodora said she fled to another state, but you think Theodora did something to her? Arthur completed, the horror growing in his chest. I think about it every day, Eleanor admitted. At that moment, Daisy appeared at the door of the room where they were talking. She had woken up and was looking for Arthur. Her small hands held a new drawing. This time it wasn't a bird, but a family. A man, a woman, and 3 small children. Uncle Arthur, I made a drawing of our family, she said, offering him the paper. Arthur looked at the drawing and felt tears burn his eyes. In the drawing, he and Catherine were holding the hands of the 3 children, and above them was a shining sun. It was the first time he had seen Daisy draw something hopeful. It's beautiful, my love, he said, hugging the girl. Where's Lily? She's singing to Benjamin. He woke up and was crying, Daisy replied. Arthur took Daisy back to the room, where he found Lily by the crib, softly humming a song he had never heard before. What's that song, Lily? He asked. It's a song Daddy used to sing to us before bed, she said. I remembered it this morning. You remember your dad? A little, Lily said, continuing to hum. He was nice. He would stroke our heads and tell stories about princes saving princesses. Daisy approached her sister. Lily, tell him about the mean aunt. What mean aunt? Arthur asked. The aunt who fought with Mommy on the last day we saw her, Lily said, stopping her humming. She came to our house really angry and said Mommy had to give us to her. Arthur felt a chill down his spine. And what did your mom say? Mommy cried a lot and said she didn't want to give us away. But the aunt said that if Mommy didn't do what she said, something bad would happen to Benjamin, Lily continued. The aunt said she knew bad people who hurt little babies. Daisy added, clinging to Arthur's arm. And then your mum agreed? Arthur asked, his voice nearly failing. Mommy said she would think about it. Then the aunt left and Mommy cried all night, Lily said. The next day she took us for a car ride and said we were going on an adventure. What adventure? Arthur pressed. She said we were going to wait on a highway until someone good appeared to take care of us. She said that when a good person passed by, we had to go with them, Daisy explained. Arthur understood with horror that Evangeline hadn't abandoned her daughters randomly. She had specifically chosen that highway at that time, hoping someone like him would pass by and pick them up. Girls, did your mom say anything about how you would recognize the good person? She said the good person would stop their car to help, would worry about Benjamin, and would be kind to us, Lily said. And you did all of that. At that moment, Arthur's phone rang. It was Catherine, and her voice was tense. Arthur, I'm at the cafe. Theodora just arrived, and she brought someone with her. Who? A large man who looks dangerous. And there's more. She has photos of the girls, professional photos, like they're in a product catalogue. Arthur felt nauseous. Catherine, get out of there now. I can't. She's already seen me. I have to go through with the plan, Catherine said. But Arthur, if something happens to me... Don't talk like that. If something happens, you take care of the children. Promise. Before Arthur could answer, the call dropped. 15 minutes of silence passed like hours. Arthur paced back and forth in the hospital corridor, while Eleanor tried unsuccessfully to calm him. The children had noticed his anxiety and were also restless. When the phone finally rang again, Arthur answered before the first ring finished. Catherine, we got her, said Maria's voice. Theodora completely incriminated herself. She offered not only your girls, but also 4 other children she has in stock. We recorded everything. And Catherine? She's fine. She left a few minutes before me so we wouldn't arouse suspicion. And the man who was with Theodora? He didn't say a word during the whole conversation, but... Maria hesitated. Arthur, when Theodora showed the pictures of the girls, he smiled in a way that gave me chills. I don't think all the children she sells are for families who want to adopt. The implication of what Maria was suggesting made Arthur feel physically ill. Theodora wasn't just selling children for irregular adoption. She was selling them to people with much worse intentions. An hour later, Catherine arrived at the hospital, visibly shaken but determined. Arthur, we need to act fast. Theodora scheduled the delivery of the girls for tomorrow morning. Delivery. She said she's going to pick them up from the hospital under the pretext of taking them to New York, but she's actually going to deliver them directly to the couple, which is us. The meeting is at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. A warehouse, Arthur repeated. That doesn't sound like a place for delivering children for adoption. Exactly. It sounds like a place where things are done that shouldn't be seen, Catherine said. Arthur, we have the recordings. We have the evidence Eleanor gave us. We have the testimony from the doctor in New York. We have everything we need to put an end to Theodora. Then let's take everything to the police now. We can't, Catherine said. If she's arrested today, we'll never find out where the other children she mentioned are. And we'll never know what happened to Evangeline. Arthur looked at the girls, who were playing quietly in the hospital room, oblivious to the fact that their lives hung by a thread. What are you suggesting? That tomorrow I go to the meeting pretending to be the buyer, but this time with the police waiting outside, Catherine said. It's the only way to catch Theodora in the act and uncover the entire network. It's too risky. Arthur, if we don't do this, even if we manage to keep the girls, Theodora will always be a threat. She'll find a way to take the children from us, or worse. That night, while the children slept, Arthur made the hardest decision of his life. He called Richard and asked him to discreetly contact the police. The next day, they would put an end to Theodora once and for all. What he didn't expect was that the next morning, he would wake up to the sound of sirens at the hospital entrance. Theodora had moved first, arriving with an emergency court order and a police escort to take the children immediately. As Arthur watched the girls being carried away, screaming by officers, Theodora approached him with a venomous smile. "Mr. Blackwood, I hope you enjoyed these last few days with them, because now they're going where they truly belong." If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.